hello, welcome back. Moon Griffon Show. Of course, it's the Moon Griffon podcast, but we do a program. We appreciate you joining us. Make sure you tell people about the Moon Griffon podcast. Make sure they subscribe. I also have a radio program. You go to moongriffon.com from 9 to 12, Monday through Friday. You can check us out in the mornings, and we'd love for you to be part of that as well. But today I got a great guest. He's Congressman Mike Johnson. You've seen his name out there many, many times. Mike has been a really staunch conservative. He's been a really fighter for the American people. He's a congressman from Louisiana, but he's in the leadership positions too. So he's opportunity to talk about some different things. Anyway, Mike, how you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing great, Moon. Great to hear your voice, and congratulations on the new podcast.
Well, thank you, man. It's exciting. We're growing, and I got a good guy right here. Sam Stokes is a guy, and Sam probably don't even mention his name, but Sam's really good at this. He's a professional, trying to get me online so we can really let this thing take off after the first of the year. But Mike, thank you for being part of it. Hey, I'm gonna cover a quick subject with you. The main one I want to start with is all the stuff going on about Twitter, the FBI, who knew what they were really doing, investigations. Even one of the congressmen said we need to shut the FBI down and start all over. Please fill us in, because everything I'm reading, it scares me to death that this is going on in the United States of America.
Well, it ought to scare everybody, Moon. And if you care about free speech, I mean, it doesn't matter what political party you're in or what your philosophy is. If you care about the protection of free speech, you ought to be alarmed today. Okay, the sixth tranche of the Twitter files, it's become famous now. Twitter file release number 6 came out late yesterday. Of course, Elon Musk, when he bought the company, the richest man in the world, he's now become probably the most important person with regard to the protection of free speech, because he's pulling the veil back, right? He's letting us all see what has been happening in these giant social media platforms, these big tech platforms. And Twitter was all intertwined with the FBI. We've known this. We sort of guessed this intuitively. We felt like it was happening. We knew that our voices were being censored and silenced often on Twitter and of course on the other platforms as well. But we know now that it was happening, because what we found out last night was that the FBI was communicating directly and probably exchanging highly confidential classified material with the executives at Twitter, which is a private company. They had at least 150 emails exchanged between the FBI and the executives at Twitter just between January 2020 and November 2022. Okay, and the journalist Matt Taibbi reported all this late yesterday. They were working for one thing, we know that they censored the now famous October 2020 report from the New York Post about Hunter Biden's laptop. They buried it, they worked together. The federal government, the FBI, worked with Twitter to bury the story.
Now, Mike, can I stop you just a second?
Yeah,
you got to remember, you're talking about during the election, which would have been a breaking story. And they even took polls out. We had polls. We've seen polls where people said they would have changed their mind, because if that's a true story, it also affected Joe Biden. It affected the big guy. And I want you to explain that to people, because people have it's went in one end out the other. They hadn't paid attention as much. And it did affect that election for 2020. We got to believe that at this point.
Well, that's objectively true. That is exactly what, as you indicated, what the polling shows. That's what voters say. Had they known about Hunter Biden's laptop, it would have certainly affected at least a large percentage or some percentage of voters, their opinion about Joe Biden as a candidate. Because remember, the whole point that no one really cares about Hunter Biden. It's not about him and his lascivious lifestyle, right? The point is that it was directly related to Joe Biden himself, the big guy, as he was referred to in all the transactions, with all these foreign nationals and governments, including China and our adversaries. All of that is there. It was all on the laptop, and had the voters been exposed to that material, it may well have affected their votes, right, and affected the outcome. And look, what we found out last night, among other things, is that the FBI, this wasn't just like 1 or 2 or 3 agents, Moon. They formed a task force. They had 80 FBI agents whose full-time job it was to specialize in social media after the 2016 election. So they were working to censor free speech on the internet. They spent at least, by our calculation, about $12 million of taxpayer funds when you're talking about their salaries and benefits and all the rest. And they put their thumb on the scale. Now, we know this happened at Twitter now. And the big question is, well, it stands to reason the same thing was happening at Facebook and the other social media platforms and Google and maybe even with the mainstream media, the big broadcast networks. We all felt this was happening. We sensed that it was, and now we have the evidence.
Mike,
so Republicans, we're going to go look into all this.
Well, Congressman Mike Johnson, my special guest, Congressman, the problem is Democrats, you said this coming on, and this is what's really changed in the country. Democrats ought to be just as upset about this as Republicans. If they really, really are sincere, when you're talking about a free country, a free nation, free flow of information, media calling balls and strikes fair, they ought to be really, but they're not. They're not touching this. So my next question is, when the Republicans who will have the power after the first of the year, will this be a major investigation, number one? And number two, will it help to find out the truth, or will the media beat it back to where it's actually used against the Republicans, saying, well, all y'all want to do is go after lawsuit and go after Biden? Well, what is it? 1, 4, 5, 7 years they've gone after Trump, and they still hadn't stopped going after Trump. But I don't like to go tit for tat, but this is an important issue. And if it's not, but it's not important for the Democrats, which is about half the country now.
That's exactly right. This has nothing to do with political retribution. Of course, they're going to say that. Of course, that's going to be the narrative that the mainstream media has, and these, all big tech and Hollywood and everybody else, because they're trying to protect the left. They're trying to protect the Democrat Party. But we are going to follow the truth, Moon. We have a constitutional obligation. Congress has a constitutional responsibility to have oversight, to make sure that free speech is protected, to defend and uphold the Constitution itself. And there's nothing less than that at stake here. There are some major issues intertwined in this. I mean, first of all, the FBI has lost the trust of the American people. A large percentage of people they no longer believe in our system of justice. They don't believe that we have equal justice under the law, that this is a fair system. And that is a perilous thing in a constitutional republic, because people have to know that the system of justice is blind, and it's not here. We know that that's true. And then you've got these big social media platforms, right? That is the free marketplace of ideas now. That is the public square of our age and our generation. And if you have the government putting its thumb on the scale, censoring and silencing conservative viewpoints, you don't have a free marketplace of ideas. You don't have the free exchange of ideas. You can't have thoughtful public debate anymore because the government is preventing it, and that is serious stuff.
But Mike, don't you think, since Congressman Mike Johnson, my special guest, don't you think, Congressman, that since Obama, and I'm going to say that because he was real tired with the same media we're talking about in the social media, but don't you think we've moved into a time of free speech to now a time of this is the narrative, and you better believe this, and if you don't, we'll use the FBI and we'll use anything we can against you because the narrative, and I'm just giving you some examples, mask, the vaccine mandate, the climate change. You got to believe this. And if you don't believe this, you're wrong. That ought to scare the heck or hell, any way you want to use it, out of every American citizen, that we take the narrative of one guy like Dr. Fauci or Obama or Biden, and whatever they say, or the bureaucrats, this is what you're going to believe. This is the only thing you can believe, and everything else is wrong. That's how you lose a country, Mike. That's how you lose a country.
That's exactly right. That is the opposite of freedom. That is tyranny. You just described the practices of the Chinese Communist Party. These tyrannical regimes, they force thought. They enforce it with the rule of the law, and we don't. We're sliding into that. If we don't vigorously defend individual freedom and limited government, we are going to lose this great republic, this great experiment in self-governance. We're only 246 years into this, man. We've got to defend it with everything we have. And you're going to see the House Republicans do that beginning early January.
And I know you may not can answer this question. One more quick question. I want to move on, catch a couple of quick subjects before I let you get out of here. Is there a chance that you're a constitutional lawyer? And I know from watching you, not only here in Louisiana, but nationally, people have looked up to you Will you be one of the guys that maybe with an opportunity to be on the right committee to ask the questions?
Yeah, this is coming squarely before my committee, the House Judiciary Committee, because we have jurisdiction. And so Jim Jordan and I and Matt Gaetz and Eddie Biggs and others are going to be all over this.
I want people to remember Congressman Mike Johnson when it starts. And that's the guy I'm interviewing today because he'll be one of the major players and asking tough questions and asking the right questions. And the Democrats have no desire to ask the right questions. And I appreciate that. Let's catch a couple other quick, what I call bad bills or things that are happening. One is the new spending bill. The Senator McConnell and the Dems, this omnibus bill that they're trying to shove down our throat. More spending, more inflation, money that we don't need to spend. Maybe this bill will be for the full year. And so talk about this particular bill that's working its way through that I think is a big concern for the American people, because it looks like now it's just spend money. And I did a series on ins and outs that's coming up later by our Republican and Democrats just spend money. Not all of them, and I know you're not one, but man, just to spend some more money like this.
Yeah, it's an outrage. You're hearing conservatives sound the alarm. I don't know what Mitch McConnell is trying to do over there. The Republicans in the Senate are working with Schumer and the Democrats to force this on the American people. It's a giant omnibus spending package. It's going to be close to $2 trillion. It's about, I think it's 1.8 trillion right now.
Now, Congressman, when they started 1.8 trillion, it usually gets up to about 2.5 or 3 trillion. That's what they tell everybody. And then when the final bill comes, boom, it's a lot bigger.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Look, Congress should have been done with all of our work for the year. We all are home in our districts right now. We'll have to go back next week to vote on this thing because they couldn't get their job done. Congress is supposed to do 12 individual appropriations bills. They're supposed to be a very methodical process with how this is done. We're spending the precious dollars that taxpayers have given to the government. And remember, we're $31 trillion in federal debt. We're deep in the hole. And so they're cramming all this together, doing it literally at the last minute. There's no thought that goes into fiscal responsibility anymore. And this budget that they're about to do, this spending bill, is at least $100 billion more than the bill from just last year. We can't afford to waste money. And so that's why we're jumping up, down, screaming. You're going to see, I think, almost all the Republicans in the House who will oppose this because we can do better for the American people. And when we have the majority, when we have the gavels back in our hands, beginning January 3rd, we can do better. But for whatever reason, McConnell doesn't want to give it.
It's a shame. It's a shame, too. The Senate's got to have 60 votes to move this forward. Rand Paul, I had Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky on my program, on my radio program a while back. But I watched him the other day, and he was livid with the few. It's always a few Republicans. We need 41 votes. You got 49 in the Senate. Okay, or 40 or 50 right now. 50 in the Senate. You just need 41 of them to man up. And yet he says it's a lie Republicans are fiscally conservative. Now, he's not talking about you and people that are voting right, but it's a lie for people for the GOP to continue to vote for this and then go around and tell everybody they're fiscally conservative. And this is Rand Paul. I mean, he's got a big voice. He's a big conservative guy, and he's really upset with what he's watching happen in the Senate on this particular bill.
Rand is exactly right. I wish we had, 50 more of him in there. There's a handful. You've got Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and guys like that, but they're vastly outnumbered by these big spending rhinos. I don't know how else to say it. And the Mitt Romney caucus. They're going along with the Democrats on everything, and they're bankrupting the country. Look. This is the freedom of our children at stake here. If we go any deeper in federal debt, we're going to be owned by China. We practically are now. And our kids are not going to have the same freedom and opportunity and security that we have just because of these decisions. It's outrageous. Senator
Rand Paul was really on it. I played an audio from my radio audience, which you've been on many times. And I played him going off on the Republicans because, Mike and Congressman Mike Johnson, my special guest, me and you talk about this too. We got a lot of good conservatives. We always seem not to have enough. To beat the bills back we need to, not to have enough to push things forward. There's always that percentage of Republicans. That's a whole new ball game. But I'm not going to go into that. I've got one other real big question for you. And, of course, the Speaker of the House. And what's happening with Speaker of the House? What's going to happen with the Speaker of the House? I mean, we're closing in at the end of the year and the first of the year, and the votes are going to come in. We're going to have a new speaker. And what's going to take place with this?
Well, it's a great question. It looks like we're going to make some history on January 3rd. January 3rd, of course, is the beginning date of the new Congress. All this is done by the rules and by the Constitution itself. And the very first act of a new Congress, as soon as we begin, we bang the gavel and begin that session, the very first act is that you must elect the Speaker of the House.
Sure.
With 435 members in the House, it takes 218 votes to elect the Speaker. And usually this is already predetermined because the party that has the majority decides who their nominee is, and it's just a pro forma thing. We just go in and go through the motions, and that becomes, that's the Speaker. Well, I don't think it's going to happen that way this time because Kevin McCarthy is not able to get 218 votes committed before that date. And so we may be repeating history that has not been made in 100 years. It's the last time this happened was 1923, and they had to go to many ballots before they determined who the consensus candidate was to get 218 votes. Kevin McCarthy is working very hard to get it done, but there's some holdouts from the Freedom Caucus, and I think many others who haven't gone on record yet, potentially that are just simply not going to give him their vote. So we don't know what's going to happen. Okay. I mean, it's a very interesting time in American politics.
As long as the Democrats don't get to pick the Speaker, I think we're going to eventually be all right. But we need a good, strong Speaker, and that's a concern for me. Congressman Mike Johnson, I appreciate you. You're coming on quick notice. I always appreciate you, man. Y'all remember the name because when they do get to the investigation part, Congressman Johnson's sitting on there. He's the guy you want to watch on that committee. They got some other good ones, but he's one of the guys that's not scared to ask real questions. And that's why we always appreciate Congressman Mike Johnson. Congressman, thank you. God bless, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Talk to you later.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up. A lot more podcasts to come as we grow and grow and grow. Make sure you press that subscribe button. Tell a friend. The Moon Griffon podcast is out there. Make sure you check us out, YouTube, Rumble, all the great places to get your YouTube. We'll see you next time. God bless, and thank you for joining us.